Hello, my name is Joe Foy and I'm National Campaign Director for the Wilderness Committee. We're an environmental organization based in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. This is a video slideshow, runs for about 20 to 25 minutes, about our campaign activities from May 2008 right up to April 2009. I hope you enjoy it. You can find our annual report on our website at wildernesscommittee.org. It'll give you a comprehensive view of the various campaigns and projects we worked on to protect nature over the year. Here's a great photo of the people that make up the Wilderness Committee. Our first project was in May 2008, where we were working to re-clear the Silver Daisy Trail on the west side of Manning Park. We have a campaign to expand the park to the west. Then it was off to Campbell River, where I participated in an event to talk about the privatization of our rivers, which we are very much against. Off to Kimberley in the southeastern part of the province, similar kind of event, where we were speaking to the people with our allies, COPE 378, the union that works on power issues. Then off to the Lillooet Valley to see a private power project being constructed. Really, these things rip up the rivers in order to divert them for many kilometers into big pipes to create electrical power. Really messes with the water quality. Then off to Salmon Arm in south central British Columbia to talk about this marina that had been proposed for the Adams River, one of the more famous salmon runs, and of course we were opposed to that. Salmon again on the steps of the BC Courthouse, where we joined Alexandra Morton, calling for fish farms to be regulated by the federal fisheries rather than the province. Seton Portage, a small First Nations village east of Lillooet, where we worked with the local people, local Statliam people, to revitalize their farm there, part of our community development efforts in the area. First newspaper of the year was a joint production with partners about the Canadian tar sands, extremely dirty way to get energy that we greatly oppose. And we went to Bowen Island to join with activists from all over Canada in training workshops on how to fight back on projects like the tar sands, to fight back on projects that make global warming worse, and got together, talked about different strategies so that we can move to a cleaner, greener Canada. Then off to British Columbia's Golden area, where we looked at another river, the Blaeberry River, Thompson Falls, being targeted by the private power developers, to the little town of Balfour, where we listened to the community concern about the Glacier and Hauser Creeks. There's NDP MLA Corky Evans. Over to Fernie, where concern over the gold rush that private power developers have had on their rivers, where we spoke with NDP MLA Norm MacDonald. Into Invermere, there's famous broadcaster Rafe Mair, an environmentalist. Rafe Mair speaking to the people there. Rafe was tireless as he moved around the province this year, talking about the dangers of these river privatization projects. Then Pitt Meadows, a farming community in the Fraser Valley, where we joined farmers Ting Wu and Risa Lin as they work to protect their farm against highway development associated with the Provincial Gateway Freeway expansion program. We went to an area near Mission to have our annual, semi-annual planning retreat, where we planned our next moves and campaigns. Next newspaper, stuck in traffic about the provincial government's freeway expansion programs. Of course, we advocate expanding the transit system. We did, in July of 2008, a photo expedition over Clayoquot Sound. Clayoquot Sound was coming under increasing pressure with a logging company, Mammoet Coulson, who wanted to log in one of the pristine areas of Clayoquot Sound. Of course, Clayoquot's one of the more famous wilderness areas in British Columbia. We joined with other environmental groups, Greenpeace, Sierra Club, Friends of Clayoquot Sound, to negotiate with the company, trying to keep them out of the intact area. And we launched a expedition into the threatened area, Heshquit Point Creek, to collect photos of the ancient temperate rainforest there, to learn about the logging activity which is happening all around Heshquit Point Creek, and to take photographs and video of a new road right-of-way which had been cleared right to the edge of Heshquit Point Creek through the ancient forest. We were able to take this information back to our negotiations and fight hard to keep the company out of the valley. We also sent an expedition into Heshquit Point Creek to record the huge trees there in the ancient temperate rainforest. These trees could grow well over 1,000 years old and well over 25 stories tall. We brought that information back. Our next newspaper that we published was about Alberta's and British Columbia's grizzly bear population, threatened bear population. Then it was off to Statliam territory again. We're working with the Statliam people to open up Lost Valley in the Cayoosh Range. This has been a multi-year project to re-clear an old trail that runs for over 30 kilometers up Lost Creek to the Cayoosh Range. Another trail project, this time in the Clayoquot River Valley and Clayoquot Sound, working with the Tloquit First Nations people to re-clear the trail there so people could experience that ancient temperate rainforest. Sent an expedition to northeast of Prince George to the Bear Paw Ridge area. This is the inland temperate rainforest. We published this report on the economics of logging spotted owl habitat in southwestern BC, and we found it makes more sense to protect that habitat. Published this newspaper on the need for the province of British Columbia to have endangered species legislation, headed up once more to near Prince George to the Morkill River. An extraordinarily beautiful river, you guessed it, targeted by this gold rush of private power developers, which we strongly oppose. Another proposal to put this river in a pipe, to pipe the river, most of it around this falls, really lowering the volume that comes out of this falls in order to produce very expensive electricity, which then BC Hydro, the public company, would be forced to buy. And we say that this rush to private power will wreck our rivers and streams and bankrupt BC Hydro in the end. In Manitoba, our Manitoba office continued to rally against logging in their provincial park system. Back in British Columbia, we mounted yet another Gateway protest against the Gateway program to expand the #1 freeway leading into Vancouver, as well as the ports. We say we should be putting our money into transit. Here's a little street theater associated with that. Off to the Walburn Valley on Vancouver Island, where Ken Wu, based out of Victoria, was showing the huge trees that were being cut there. And then in October of 2008, Ken mounted this massive rally on the steps of the legislature in Victoria, calling for an end to old-growth logging on Vancouver Island in southwestern BC.
Environmentalists have been raising new warnings this week about the health of killer whales off the BC coast. They are said to be losing blubber and developing strange behavior patterns because of a shortage of salmon. Whales face many serious threats in BC waters, from declining salmon stocks to toxic contamination. And that is especially frustrating for some biologists who accuse the federal government of failing to protect animal habitat, even though there's legislation in place that should ensure action.
We mounted a court case represented by EcoJustice together with other partners to force the federal government to map out endangered orca habitat. We got bad news about the loss of a spotted owl in the captive breeding program, putting the spotted owl in even worse shape than it already is. We worked with activists in Mission to defend a very large area of rural land from urban development. In Manitoba, our activists there, our campaigners there, worked to stop logging in the provincial park system. In Clayoquot Sound, we mounted an expedition to the Bolson River, a wild river being targeted by a private power developer. This thing is sweeping all across the province. Then it was into Vancouver for planning for our next campaign moves as we strategized how we were going to get logging stopped in the Manitoba parks, how were we going to put an end to the river privatization sweeping the province. Then bang, we got great news out of Manitoba. The provincial government there unexpectedly announced the end to logging in the provincial park system. This was a successful conclusion to a 7-year campaign to protect the parks, and we celebrated wildly. It was a very big win. Then off to Pemberton, where a public meeting was being held about the Ryan River being targeted by a private power developer who wants to divert the Ryan into a series of big pipes and tunnels to produce power. Then in Vancouver, we mounted a small gateway protest because federal and provincial politicians were coming together at the Trade and Convention Center. And then Andrea Reimer, our executive director of the Wilderness Committee, sworn in as a Vancouver City Councillor. We're all very proud of Andrea. Our 2008 annual general meeting, you can see Andrea, myself, and Gwen Barley. There's Matt Jong, our financial controller. At the podium, Jennifer Campagnolo, the head of our board. The Eugene Rogers Award, which we give every year for activists working to protect the environment. Keel Aguilar, one of our campaigners. Stephanie Gribble, our volunteer coordinator. And here is Mike Gildersleeve honoring Bob Broughton, a former director of the Wilderness Committee, and also Mike with Alice Eaton, both former directors with many years service. Devin Page, executive director of EcoJustice, our newest board member, and our speaker Andy Ross from COPE 378, who came out to speak to the members about the campaign to keep our rivers wild and power public. Our volunteer party, where we honor our volunteers, the very backbone of the Wilderness Committee. So much gets done by volunteers. Please consider being a volunteer for the Wilderness Committee. It's a great life. You get to see a lot of neat stuff affect real change. Here are we in January 2009, Rafe Mayer, Butte Inlet public meeting, a private power proposal to divert 17 major rivers in the Butte Inlet area. People turning out to voice their opposition to this massive river privatization scheme. The SUNY, smaller than the Butte Inlet project, also on the Sunshine Coast. Also people turning out in droves to oppose this attempt to take away their river and put it into big pipes to produce power for a private company. In Victoria, Ken Wu, our campaigner there, pushing to have the top 100 trees, the biggest trees, oldest trees in British Columbia, recognized and protected in legislation. Also, Ken working, of course, to end old growth logging in southwestern BC. Another protest in Delta, this time against the Gateway Highway expansion project. Ben West, our community development, healthy community campaigner. In February, we headed up to Crescent Spur, east of Prince George, where we went with local people to have a look at their area of ancient temperate rainforest, the inland ancient temperate rainforest, with their magnificent cedar groves. The Walker Wilderness is up there, Morkville River as well. A planning retreat in the Silver Hill Hall, an old heritage hall in Silver Hill. This is the area in Mission that we're working with local activists to protect against urban development. We would much rather like to see the urban development centered in the existing town of Mission and not sprawled out on this great urban, rural landscape where people really value the rural lifestyle. And then on Vancouver Island, Annette Tanner, our campaigner there, working to pull together an alliance of environmental activists.
Focus. I like to say how happy I am that there's so much support out there in Port Alberti, because we really need to have quite the team, because it's quite a big watershed. It's an awesome watershed, and to look at it from Labor Day Lake right down to the estuary takes a lot of really good neighbors.
The activists had come together to defend areas like McMillan Park, Cathedral Grove, Cathedral Canyon, and expand park protection in that part of the island. In Ontario, in Guelph, local people had teamed up with the Wilderness Committee to defend old growth forests there, and we've mounted a door-to-door education campaign. In Ottawa, they moved to protect orca habitat as our court case had pushed them towards. Ken Wu set up camp in front of the Premier of BC's constituency office to call for protection of old growth forests on Vancouver Island and the Lower Mainland.
Wilderness Committee, and as I'm standing here looking at all these smiling faces,
the ban on raw log exports and the sustainable processing and value-added manufacturing of second growth logs. If you think about how special of a place British Columbia is, we've got some of the most unbelievable forests here. How many jurisdictions on the planet have trees that can grow as wide as your living room, as tall as a skyscraper, and live to be almost 2,000 years old?
Ken Wu has really been working hard on this campaign, both in Victoria and here on the Lower Mainland, to end the logging of the big trees. And then we published this two-part opinion mailer card, thousands of them, on the protection of Alberta's grizzly bear population. We got word that spotted owl habitat was being logged on Fire Mountain, just north of Harrison Lake in southwestern BC. We headed out the area to photo document this logging, and sure enough, a massive area of old growth Douglas fir had been laid low. We collected the information, photos, video. We went to the news media, contacted the provincial government, and have secured a promise that the government is about to ban this kind of logging in spotted owl conservation areas. We'll have to wait and see if that actually happens. Then we launched 10,000 Voices, our pushback campaign on the river privatization, where thanks to volunteers like Ruth here, we contacted thousands of supporters who then contacted their MLAs in their constituency offices to push back on private power. We conducted this gateway protest linked to climate change, which is what happens if you put thousands of new cars on the road. We published this publication about the protection of a national park being threatened by a proposed ski development. We got out to the Mamquam River in southwestern BC to photograph and film an existing private power project up and running. Made sure to collect evidence of how the river is being dammed and diverted. That is a a hallmark of these private power projects where they dam the rivers and put them in big pipes. We participated in the pilgrimage to Burns Bog to bring attention on this incredible urban wild area under threat from the Gateway Freeway expansion project. So we had many activists heading out to Burns Bog to give life to that campaign to protect it. Out at UBC, we joined in with the farm truck to bring attention to the threats that the UBC research farm is undergoing from pressures to develop it for housing, and made the point that farmland is far too precious to plow under. There's Ben West and Eric Doherty working on the campaign. Our final project for the year was the publication of Vote Wild to let voters know of the environmental issues facing them as we approached a provincial election campaign. And that brings us to the end of this slideshow. I apologize for how fast we had to go, had to report on a lot of issues in a short time. If you would like to know more, please go to our website at wildernesscommittee.org. That's wildernesscommittee.org. And one more time, I hope you can find the time to volunteer for our organization. We can't do it without you. Bye for now.